I, 28 never thought I would be making a post like this, but I really need to get this off my chest. My life has completely turned upside down in the past few months, and I need advice on how to handle this mess. I am the oldest of 3 siblings, me, 28 my sister Emma, 25 and my brother Jake, 23 Our mom passed away from cancer when I was 15, Emma was 12, and Jake was 10. It was devastating for all of us, especially since mom's illness was very sudden and she was gone within 6 months of her diagnosis. Dad took it really hard. He tried his best to keep it together for us kids, but anyone could see he was struggling. He would work long hours at his engineering firm, probably to avoid coming home to an empty house. I basically had to step up and become a parent figure to my younger siblings since Dad was barely functioning. I helped Emma and Jake with homework, made sure they ate proper meals, and tried to keep some kind of normalcy in their lives. It wasn't easy, especially since I was dealing with my own grief, but someone had to do it. 3 years after Mom died, Dad met Becca, 45 at a grief support group. She was also a widow. Her husband had died in a car accident 2 years prior. She had no kids of her own and worked as a financial advisor. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags and how quickly she integrated herself into our lives. She started showing up at our house with home-cooked meals, offering to help Jake with his math homework, taking Emma shopping for clothes, basically doing all the things Mom used to do. Dad was completely smitten. I remember him smiling for the first time in years when Becca was around. They dated for about a year before getting married. The wedding was small, just family and close friends. Becca insisted she didn't want anything fancy, saying it would be disrespectful to Mom's memory to have a big celebration. At the time, we all thought she was being considerate. For the first few years, everything seemed fine. I was away at college but came home regularly. Becca always made an effort to include me in family activities, asked about my studies, and seemed genuinely interested in my life. She helped Dad get his life back on track, encouraged him to start socializing again, and even convinced him to take up golf, something he'd always wanted to try but never had time for when Mom was alive. Emma and Jake absolutely adored her. She never tried to replace Mom, but she became a maternal figure in their lives. Emma especially became close to her, probably because she was going through her teenage years and needed a woman to talk to. Jake was a bit more reserved at first, but Becca won him over by supporting his interest in photography and buying him his first professional camera. The problem started about 6 months ago when my grandfather, Dad's father, passed away. Grandpa was quite wealthy. He had built a successful construction company from scratch and made some smart real estate investments over the years. He was also very traditional in his views about family money. He always said he wanted his wealth to stay within the bloodline, which is why he left most of his estate to be divided equally between me and my siblings, with some money going to Dad as well. The total inheritance was around $2.5 million, not billions, but certainly life-changing money for all of us. Becca's behavior changed almost immediately after the will reading. It started with subtle comments about how inheritance money often ruins young people's lives. She would bring up stories at dinner about lottery winners who went bankrupt or trust fund kids who developed drug problems. Then she started suggesting that maybe we should let Dad manage the money until we were older and more established in our careers. At first, I thought she was just being protective. But then I noticed she was having a lot of private conversations with Emma and Jake. One day, I overheard her telling Emma that she should be careful around me because apparently, oldest children often try to take advantage of their younger siblings in inheritance situations. She actually said she had seen it happen many times in her work as a financial advisor. Last month, I came home early from work and overheard Becca talking to Dad in their bedroom. She was saying things like we were too young to handle this responsibility and that they should consider putting all the inheritance money in a joint account that she and Dad would manage for our benefit. She was going on about how they needed to protect us from making bad decisions and how this kind of money could tear families apart if not managed properly. I might have let that slide if it wasn't for what happened next. Emma called me last week, very upset, asking why I was trying to take her inheritance away. Confused, I asked what she was talking about. She told me that Becca had shown her emails between me and a lawyer discussing ways to contest Grandpa's will. According to these emails, I was arguing that as the oldest grandchild and the only one with an established career, I should receive a larger portion of the inheritance. I was completely blindsided. These emails were completely fabricated. I had never contacted any lawyer about the inheritance. When I tried to tell Emma this, she didn't believe me. Becca had apparently been preparing her for this conversation, warning her that I might deny everything. Jake also believed Becca's lies, and now both my siblings barely speak to me. I finally confronted Becca about this last week. Instead of denying it, she actually tried to justify her actions. She said that as our stepmother for the past decade, she had a responsibility to protect the family's interests. She claimed that she had seen too many families destroyed by inheritance disputes and that she was just trying to prevent that from happening to us. She even suggested that I should be grateful she was looking out for everyone's interests. When I tried talking to Dad about this, he completely brushed off my concerns. He said Becca only wants what's best for us and that I was being paranoid. He suggested we all go to family therapy to work through our issues. I know that's just Becca's way of making me look like the problem, she's already convinced my siblings that I'm being greedy and unreasonable. I'm at a complete loss about what to do. This inheritance was from our grandfather, who specifically wanted it split equally between his grandchildren. Becca never even met Grandpa more than a handful of times. He was already in declining health when she married Dad. She has no right to try to control this money, but she's somehow convinced everyone that she's just being a concerned stepmother. I'm considering getting a lawyer involved, but I'm worried it will completely destroy my relationship with my siblings. They already barely trust me thanks to Becca's lies. I never wanted any drama over this inheritance, but it feels like Becca is forcing my hand. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Reading your suggestions about gathering evidence and protecting myself legally really helped me think clearly about this situation. Unfortunately, things have gotten much worse over the past 2 weeks, and I need to share what happened. After reading all your comments suggesting I get proof of Becca's manipulation, I started investigating those emails she showed my siblings. It wasn't easy since neither Emma nor Jake wanted to talk to me. I tried calling them multiple times, but they either ignored my calls or hung up after a few seconds. I finally managed to get through to Jake last Wednesday when I called from a different number. Jake was cold at first, but I managed to convince him to at least hear me out. I explained that I needed to see these emails she showed them, not to defend myself, but to understand what was happening. After almost an hour of talking, he agreed to send me screenshots of the emails Becca had shown them. What I found was both shocking and infuriating. The emails were obviously fake. Not only was the lawyer's email address clearly made up, it was something like topnickattorney@lawfirm.net, but the formatting was all wrong. The letterhead didn't match any real law firm's format, and there were basic grammatical errors that no professional lawyer would make. The emails detailed supposed conversations about contesting the will based on my status as the oldest grandchild and my close relationship with Grandpa. The worst part was how these fake emails included personal details about my siblings that only someone close to the family would know. One email mentioned how Emma had struggled academically after Mom's death, which was true, but not something I would ever use against her, suggesting this made her less capable of managing her inheritance. Another email brought up Jake's brief rebellious phase in high school when he got caught smoking weed, painting him as irresponsible with money. I took all this evidence to Emma first, thinking she would be more reasonable than Jake. I was wrong. When I showed her the inconsistencies in the emails and explained how they were clearly fabricated, she completely lost it. She accused me of trying to manipulate her again and said Becca had already warned them I might try to discredit the emails. According to Becca, I was tech savvy enough to create fake evidence to cover my tracks. Jake, at least, seemed uncertain after I pointed out the problems with the emails. He admitted that some things didn't add up, but he was torn between believing me and staying loyal to Becca, who he said had been nothing but supportive of him for the past decade. But here's where things took an even darker turn. Yesterday, I received an unexpected call from Uncle Mike, not really my uncle, just Dad's best friend since college. Mike has known our family forever. He was Dad's best man at both his weddings and was like a second father to us after Mom died. He called because he had noticed Becca's strange behavior at Grandpa's funeral and something about it had bothered him enough to do some digging. What he found out made my blood run cold. Becca had been married 3 times before marrying my dad, not once like she had claimed. In each marriage, she had married into wealthy families and managed to get control of significant family assets before things went wrong. In her first marriage, she convinced her husband to add her name to his family's generations-old farm property for estate planning purposes. The farm was sold 6 months later, and she walked away with half the money in the divorce. Mike found this out through his cousin who works in real estate in Becca's hometown. He spent the past week gathering documentation about her previous marriages and the pattern was clear. She would target wealthy men with family money, particularly those with children, then slowly work to gain control of the assets while driving wedges between family members. I took this information straight to Dad, showing him the proof Mike had gathered. His reaction shocked me to my core. Instead of being angry or even surprised, he defended her. He said everyone deserves second chances and that Becca had changed. When I asked why she had lied about her previous marriages, he suggested that maybe she was too traumatized to talk about them. It was like he was completely brainwashed. Somehow, Becca found out about my conversation with Uncle Mike within hours. She immediately called a family meeting, probably to get ahead of the story. We all gathered in the living room where she put on quite a performance. Through tears, she confessed to her past marriages, spinning a tale about abusive ex-husbands and how she was too ashamed to tell us before. She claimed she had changed her name and hidden her past to protect herself from these supposedly abusive men. Emma and Jake completely bought her story. They hugged her and told her how brave she was for finally opening up. But I noticed she conveniently left out any mention of the financial aspects of these marriages that Mike had uncovered. When I tried to bring this up, Emma actually shouted at me to stop being cruel. Now Becca is pushing harder than ever for Dad to protect the inheritance by putting it in a joint account. She's been suggesting that my paranoid behavior and cruel accusations show that I'm not mentally stable enough to handle my share of the money. What's truly terrifying is that Dad seems to be seriously considering it. Just this morning, he mentioned setting up a meeting with his lawyer to discuss protecting the family's interests. My siblings think I'm being heartless for not believing Becca's sob story about her past. Emma has blocked my number completely, and Jake only responds with one-word texts. I feel like I'm losing my entire family while watching a master manipulator tear us apart, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Update 2: I need to update you all because some huge developments have happened in the past few weeks. Remember how Uncle Mike was helping me investigate Becca? Well, he managed to track down Becca's second ex-husband, Tom, through some mutual business connections. What Tom told us completely validated all my suspicions and revealed just how calculated Becca's actions have been. Tom agreed to meet with me and Uncle Mike at a coffee shop in his city. He initially seemed hesitant to talk about Becca, but once I explained our situation, he opened up. According to Tom, Becca's pattern in her previous marriages was always the same. She would specifically target wealthy men with family money and established businesses, particularly those with children. She was extremely patient, sometimes spending years slowly manipulating family dynamics. In Tom's case, Becca spent 3 years gradually driving a wedge between him and his 2 adult daughters. She would make subtle comments about how his daughters only visited when they needed money, or how they didn't appreciate all he did for them. Then she started suggesting that his daughters were taking advantage of him financially. Sound familiar? It's exactly what she's doing with me and my siblings now. The real scheme came to light when Becca convinced Tom to transfer his family's vacation home into her name. She claimed it was for tax purposes and estate planning. She had all these complicated explanations about tax benefits and asset protection that Tom didn't fully understand but trusted her judgment since she worked in finance. Within months of the transfer, she sold the house without his knowledge and disappeared with all the money. But here's what really got to me. Tom said Becca had used almost identical tactics with his daughters that she's using with us now. She would fabricate evidence of conversations that never happened, always making it seem like family members were plotting against each other. She even used the same line about protecting assets in a joint account for everyone's benefit. The most disturbing part of our conversation was when Tom showed us letters his daughters had written him years after their divorce, apologizing for believing Becca's lies and cutting him off. By the time they realized the truth, Becca had already moved on to her next target. Tom and his daughters eventually reconciled, but he said their relationship was never quite the same. While all this was shocking enough, it wasn't even the worst part. Through Tom's lawyer, we discovered that Becca is currently being investigated in another state for financial fraud related to her third marriage. She had somehow managed to keep this hidden during her background check when she married Dad. The investigation involves allegations of forged documents and unauthorized transfers of family assets, exactly the kind of thing we're worried about now. I immediately took all this evidence to Dad. I had documentation from Tom, copies of police reports, and even contact information for the detective handling the fraud investigation. I thought surely now he would see the truth about who he married. His reaction completely floored me. Dad accused me of trying to destroy his marriage out of some misplaced resentment. He said he was disappointed in me for not giving Becca a chance to explain her side of the story. Then he dropped a bombshell that made my stomach sink. He had already signed papers giving Becca joint access to his accounts, including the account where his share of Grandpa's inheritance was deposited. When I asked him how he could do this given everything I'd shown him, he said Becca had already told him about the investigation, claiming it was all a misunderstanding caused by her third husband's jealous children. He actually believes that Becca is the victim in all her previous marriages, despite the clear pattern and evidence. I tried one last time to reason with him, pointing out how Becca's story kept changing. First she only had one previous marriage, then she had 3 but they were all abusive, and now apparently all her ex-husband's children were conspiring against her. Dad's response was to ask me to leave his house and not come back until I was ready to apologize to Becca. The hardest part is watching history repeat itself. Just like Tom's daughters, Emma and Jake are completely under Becca's spell. They're convinced that I'm trying to destroy their new family out of jealousy or greed. Emma even suggested that maybe I need professional help for my paranoid delusions about Becca, obviously Becca's words coming out of my sister's mouth. I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow to discuss options for protecting my share of the inheritance. I hate that it's come to this, but after what I learned from Tom, I can't take any chances. I just hope I can find a way to protect my siblings too, even if they currently see me as the enemy. Update 3: This will be my final update on this whole situation. After everything that happened, I had no choice but to take serious legal action. My lawyer helped me secure my portion of the inheritance and place it in a protected trust that neither Becca nor anyone else can access. We also filed formal complaints about Becca's financial fraud with the relevant authorities, providing them with all the evidence we had gathered, including Tom's testimony. The fallout was exactly what I feared and even worse than I imagined. Dad and my siblings haven't spoken to me in weeks. They're convinced I've torn the family apart with what they call my baseless accusations and paranoid conspiracy theories, despite all the evidence. Becca has completely poisoned them against me, painting herself as the victim of a cruel smear campaign. Last week, I received a package from Emma. Inside was the birthday gift I had sent her, a necklace that used to belong to Mom, which I had been saving for her 26th birthday. There was a note saying she doesn't want anything from someone who tried to destroy her family. The necklace was Mom's favorite, and Emma had always admired it when we looked at old photos. Sending it back felt like a final rejection of not just me, but Mom's memory too. Jake's reaction wasn't any better. We live in the same city, and I occasionally see him around. Last week, I ran into him at the grocery store. He literally turned around and walked out, leaving his cart full of groceries in the middle of the aisle. This is my little brother who used to come to me for everything, who I taught to ride a bike and help with his college applications. Now he can't even stand to be in the same building as me. The investigation into Becca's fraud is ongoing, and my lawyer says it looks promising. The detective handling the case said they've uncovered a pattern of similar behavior across multiple states. But I've decided to step back from trying to convince my family of the truth. My lawyer advised me to cut contact completely for now to protect myself legally. She's worried Becca might try to retaliate with false accusations once the investigation closes in on her. The hardest part was packing up my childhood bedroom at Dad's house. He wasn't home when I went to get my things, which was probably for the best. Becca had already taken down all the family photos that included me. There used to be a photo of Mom, me, Emma, and Jake at the beach, the last vacation we took before Mom got sick. That photo was gone, replaced by a picture of Becca with Emma and Jake at some recent family event I wasn't invited to. I'm moving to another city next month. I got a job offer that's actually a great career move, but honestly, I would have taken any excuse to leave. I can't stay here watching Becca destroy my family while they thank her for doing it. The company is paying for relocation, and I start in 6 weeks. Maybe someday they'll see the truth about Becca. Maybe when the fraud investigation concludes, or when she inevitably tries to take control of their inheritance too, they'll realize I was trying to protect them. But I can't stick around waiting for that to happen. The Becca situation has shown me that sometimes protecting yourself means walking away, even from family. I've arranged for my lawyer to monitor the situation with the inheritance and keep me informed if Becca tries anything. Beyond that, I'm done. It hurts more than I can express, but I need to start building a new life for myself. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you end up with, and I'm beginning to accept that. To everyone who offered advice and support throughout this nightmare, thank you. You helped me see that I wasn't crazy for questioning Becca's behavior, and you gave me the courage to stand my ground even when it meant standing alone. I probably won't post any more updates unless something major happens with the fraud investigation, but I want you all to know that your support really meant a lot during this difficult time.